For a lot of US listeners, today's band is a well-kept Canadian secret. And that's not a good thing, because these classic rockers have turned out a killer catalog that includes multiple top 40 hits. Just not on this side of the border. However, there is one song that has rocked American audiences and American radio. It's a haunting battle cry, burning with righteous indignation. A call to defend the downtrodden and to stand against hate. His management actually tried to talk him, the lead singer and main songwriter, out of even recording it, and he nearly listened to him. But a devastating tragedy motivated him to see this song through. This is a story of a singer who never gave up, and he found redemption in the chart later on because of it. The story's coming up next. Hey, music junkies. Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember the MTV also-rans like Night Tracks and Friday Night Videos, you're going to dig this channel. Music nostalgia all the time. Make sure to subscribe below right now and make sure to click the bell so that you always get our latest interviews and videos. And we also have a Patreon that you're going to want to check out below. That helps us so much. So it's time for another edition of Number One in Our Hearts. This is a show that honors songs that were so brilliant, so great. They should have been number one on the Billboard Hot 100, but for whatever reason, whether it was, poor marketing, lousy label support, lack of radio play, or even just sheer stupidity, the song just didn't make it. But on this show, we put it back where it belongs. Previous episodes, we covered More Than a Feeling by Boston. In Spirit of Radio by Rush. Land of Confusion by Genesis. But today we're going to give some love to the Toronto band Red Rider and their haunting rocker, Lunatic Fringe. Didn't even chart in America. The band Red Rider was actually a no-hit wonder, but the singer and writer would have his redemption and actually hit the top of the charts. I'll tell you in a minute. So like I said, Canada's Red Rider never really cracked the American market. I mean, not in a big way. It's really a shame because that means a lot of US listeners have missed out on really incredible music. But with their trademark blend of AOR and new wave, there's just no doubt Red Rider and band leader Tom Cochrane were hugely popular north of the border. Cochran, who took up singing and songwriting duties for the band, actually had something of a rock and roll Cinderella story. I love these kind of things. Before he joined Red Rider, Tom was already pursuing a career as a folk singer. He's playing in pubs and roughneck bars and coffee houses across the highways of Ontario. He was dodging beer bottles in the process, apparently. I guess there were some tough crowds up there. In 1974, Cochran released his first solo album, Hang On to Your Resistance, although it wasn't exactly a commercial smash. In 1975, he composed the music for the soundtrack of My Pleasure Is My Business. After that, Tom released two more standalone singles. There was Softly Walk Away, again in 75, and Sail On in 76. Sail off down the bay. As Tom chased his big break, he took on a number of jobs to make ends meet. He worked as a dishwasher, he was a cab driver, and a phone book delivery guy. He also worked on the loading docks at Sears and Canada Packers. He was even in a pit crew for racing. Looking back, Tom said, and I quote, "Those gigs are really character builders. You pay some bills along the way with them. But it's real life also that you learn from and draw songs from." Finally, on one night in 1978, at Toronto's infamous El Macambo Club, Cochran met a local group called Red Rider. Led by singer and guitarist Ken Greer, the group also included Jeff Jones on bass, Peter Boynton on keyboard, and Rob Baker on drums. When Tom told them that he wanted in, the group actually agreed to an audition. From then on, he was the band's lead singer and the primary songwriter. So once Tom was on board, Red Rider started demoing their material. To get things rolling, Tom called his friend Dean Cameron, who was A&R at Capitol Records. Dean had actually drummed on Cochran's solo debut. So Cameron drafted Red Rider onto Capitol's roster, and soon they got to work on their first record, Don't Fight It. The album was released on October 23rd, 1979. And it featured the singles White Hot, and also the title track. Both songs cracked the Canadian and US charts. White Hot was the more successful of the two. It reached number 20 in Canada, and I believe it went to number 48 here in the States. Didn't break the top 40. Don't Fight It, it stalled at number 75 and number 103, respectively. Now, the album sold 100,000 copies, and it opened the way for a string of successful follow-ups and Canadian album-oriented rock hits as well. Red Rider's sophomore offering, As Far as Siam, that was recorded at Sunset Sound in LA and produced by Richard Landis and Michael James Jackson. It was released by Capitol Records on June 30th, 1981. It reached number 65 on Billboard's Pop Albums chart in 1981, and since then it's also become popular on American classic rock radio stations. Now, two singles were released from As Far as Siam. The first was What Have You Got to Do to Get Off Tonight, parentheses. It just missed the top 40 on the Canadian charts. It went to number 42. The next, however, would become the band's most famous song, the haunting and hard-hitting Lunatic Fringe. It's a song about standing up against racism and about being on guard against forces opposing freedom. Its message both condemns political extremism and puts proponents of hate on notice. Sounds like a song that the world needed to hear then and now. Well, actually, Red Rider's management didn't see it that way, and it was almost never cut. I guess the way they explained it to Tom was that there wasn't any room for deep topics like this in the disposable world of pop. Looking back, Tom said, I've always wanted to be a storyteller. I remember at the time everybody was saying, you can't do this. Management was saying, just write pop songs. Will you? Let's get on with, making some money. Yeah, sure, they needed to make money, but that wasn't Tom's highest priority. This song had a message that he knew that people needed to hear. So when Tom crafted the lyrics for Lunatic Fringe, there were some really heavy thoughts weighing on his mind. At the time, he was seeing a Jewish girl and had also been reading this book about Raoul Wallenberg. Raoul was a Swedish diplomat who had helped thousands of Jews escape Nazi oppression. Tom had also been deeply disturbed by recent anti-Semitic attacks in France. On the 3rd of October 1980, the Rue Copernic, a synagogue in Paris, was bombed by terrorists. 4 people were killed and 46 others were wounded. It was the first deadly attack against Jewish people in France since the end of the Second World War. Also back on his home turf back in Canada, various neo-Nazi groups were gaining traction. It seemed like all these reminders of the Holocaust were just converging in his mind at this time. Lunatic Fringe was his battle cry against hatred and persecution. So it's not hard to see why Tom Cochrane was distraught when they told him not to bother with this song. Tom said that they almost convinced him to abandon Lunatic Fringe altogether. But there was an event beyond those that I've mentioned that would motivate him to forge ahead no matter what. As we get into the rest of this song, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the brand of glasses I always wear. Zenni has been ranked #1 in customer service for the 5th year in a row. At Zenni.com, you can design your own frames, the color, the shape, and the style. Check it out today. So when Red Rider went into the studio to demo some songs, a completely different tragedy would rekindle Tom's resolve. While the band was recording, Tom got word from their engineer that John Lennon had just been killed. The news cut him to the bone. Lennon was a musical genius and an inspiration to so many, including Tom. And he remembers saying to himself in that moment, Here's a guy that always wore his heart on his sleeve. For better, for worse, these lyrics, they're going to stand. So Tom's reverence for John Lennon took front stage, and he felt newfound courage burning inside of him. He didn't care what management said. This song, Lunatic Fringe, it was going to happen. Come hell or high water. Red Rider was going to record it, and they were going to release it. And it didn't matter what anyone else said. Tom was absolutely determined. And what can only be described as a silver lining to such a terrible tragedy. Tom stuck to his principles and he recorded Lunatic Fringe, and it was undoubtedly a song that needed to be brought into existence. Such an amazing vocal on it. One that would help many resolve to stand up for what is right. Incidentally, and not surprisingly, it went on to become the biggest hit that Red Rider ever had. And also begins with this incredible ethereal intro created by the Austrian producer Peter Wolf. Now, the term lunatic fringe is widely credited to U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt, who is said to have popularized the term. And just to paraphrase, he said, and I quote, "Among the wise and high-minded people who strive earnestly for peace, there are foolish fanatics always to be found. The men who form the lunatic fringe." Picking up on this accurate description, Cochran opens the song lyrics calling out these fanatics. Lunatic Fringe, I know you're out there. The lyrics in the song itself are like a warning shot. Tom Cochrane is telling these harbingers of hate to expect resistance. We know you're out there hiding, holding your meetings. We can hear you coming. We know what you're after. Now, these lyrics reference Hitler's so-called final solution that was his design to exterminate the Jewish people back in the day. You're not going to win this time. As he closes out, he sings, "Can you feel the resistance? Can you feel the thunder?" And there's no doubt that anyone with half a heart is ready to stand up and fight for what is right in this situation. As powerful and revolutionary as the Lunatic Fringe was, it would not chart in the Hot 100. It would, however, reach number 11 on the US mainstream rock chart and number 52 in Australia, and somehow missed the charts in their homeland. I've seen some places say it was number 1 in Canada. Now, I went back and looked at the Canadian RPM chart, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So if somebody knows it hit number 1, let me know, because I've looked and researched a lot of different places. Haven't been able to find it, though I do find several places where people claim that it did go to number 1 in Canada. It should have. That's why we're having this conversation. This is a song that should have been number 1. One of the big head scratchers of the time, but Lunatic Fringe has appeared in a few movies and TV shows. It was in Vision Quest in 1985. Miami Vice in the same year. My Name is Earl in 2006. Shot in the Dark in 2017, Mindhunter in 2019, and King Richard in 2021. It's also been covered by Todd Rundgren. Also Corey Taylor. Lunatic Fringe. So after As Far as Siam, Red Rider kept the music coming, releasing their third album in 1983, Neruda. This record produced the band's second biggest Canadian single, Power. Strength in the Numbers, another parentheses song. But at this point, Red Rider still had not cracked the US market. At least not in the terms of the Hot 100. Now, Lunatic Fringe was played on classic rock radio and still is to this day. But with the release in 1984's Breaking Curfew, tensions started running high in the band. They even opened for Rush's American tour, and that couldn't turn it around. And then after that, a fistfight broke out between Cochran, bassist Jeff Jones, and a road manager, and Red Rider called it quits, albeit temporarily. Tom Cochrane took some time off, but then in '86, he and Ken Greer revised the band's lineup, calling themselves Tom Cochrane and Red Ryder. They'd operate under that name for the rest of the 80s, releasing 2 more studio albums and 1 live album during that time. 1986's eponymous Tom Cochrane and Red Ryder contained the Canadian hits Boy Inside the Man, and The Untouchable One. A 1988's Victory Day became their most successful album, going double platinum and scoring a hit with the haunting Canadian tune Big League. Now, after the 80s were said and done, Red Ryder had released a total of 6 studio albums and 19 singles. 7 of those actually broke the top 40 on the US mainstream rock charts, but none of them ever broke the top 40 on the Hot 100. But Tom Cochrane, he'd keep on fighting. After 1989's The Symphony Sessions, Red Ryder officially disbanded and Tom Cochrane went solo. His 1991 debut, Mad Mad World, it brought the lackluster Hot 100 showings to an end in a big way. The global hit Life is a Highway reached to number 6 in '92, and it notched a spot higher on the US mainstream rock chart at number 5. Internationally, it went to number 2 in New Zealand and Australia, and of course, number 1 in Canada. Tom Cochrane finally busted through after fighting through the 70s and the 80s. What a song. Mad Mad World became one of Canada's biggest selling records of all time, giving Cochran a rare Canadian diamond status. That was in '95. That's 1 million albums sold for US viewers. Tom also took home a total of 4 Juno Awards for Album and Single of the Year and Songwriter and Male Vocalist of the Year as well. There's actually a pretty cool story behind Life is a Highway, come to think of it. Maybe we'll cover it down the road. Let me know if you want to do that. After Mad Mad World, Cochran kept releasing records with Ragged Ass Road in 1995. Ragged Ass Road! And X-Ray Sierra in 1999. He also scored another number 1 Canadian hit with I Wish You Well. Good song. In 1997, Tom released a compilation album of sorts, Songs of a Circling Spirit. On it, there's alternate acoustic version of Lunatic Fringe. A Lunatic Fringe. Throughout Cochran's career, he has accumulated a towering stack of accolades. He is a recipient of 8 Juno Awards, a member of the Canadian Music Hall of Fame, the Canadian Music Industry Hall of Fame, also the Canadian Walk of Fame. He's an officer of the Order of Canada, a former honorary Air Force colonel, and he holds an honorary doctorate, a Grammy nomination, and several songwriting awards. Asked about his success, Tom would say, "The thing is, I've been extremely blessed in my life and career. I've had the good fortune of having some good people around me over the years. I put one foot ahead of the other to see where the road would take me, and Providence has been kind." End of quote. But for Cochran, the biggest reward of all is hearing how his music has impacted people. For him, what really matters is hearing how one of his songs got someone through a difficult time, or how it was the soundtrack to some of their best times of their life. Tom really is a class act. As for Red Ryder, things have panned out pretty well there too. Back in 2002, Tom Cochrane, Jeff Jones, and Ken Greer, they reformed the band to play a benefit show in honor of their 80s guitar tech, John Garish. Since then, Tom Cochrane and Red Ryder have continued to be active, touring and keeping their music in the ears of the generations. So by the way, the top 5 songs on the Billboard Hot 100 the week that Lunatic Fringe peaked in the rock charts. There's No Getting Over Me by Ronnie Milsap at number 5. There ain't no getting over me. Urgent by Foreigner at number 4. Stop Dragging My Heart Around, the magnificent duet by Tom Petty and Stevie Nicks at number 3.
Stop dragging my heart around.
Queen of Hearts by Juice Newton at number 2.
Play with the Queen of Hearts. No one in it really smart.
And Endless Love by Lionel Richie and Diana Ross at number 1.
My endless love.
And actually, Endless Love would spend 9 weeks. 9 weeks at the top spot. That's a lot of time. I think we could subtract just 1 week from that amazing duet and let a little band from Canada sneak in just for 1 week. Don't you? Listen to the song, let me know. Leave us a comment about Tom Cochrane, Red Rider, and Lunatic Fringe. What do you remember about this band and this song? Such a great one. Let us know in the comments below. If you dig our stuff, make sure that you subscribe below so you never miss out on our videos. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.